Good? Hope we start? Okay. Hey, it's Joseph Papp with the Augusta Chronicle. We're here with Sheriff Richmond Roundtree, who's doing another round of Facebook Live interviews with the different media outlets here in the area. Can you talk a little bit about why you're doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to get our message across to as many people as we can. I know sometimes just within news sound bites, it's hard to get an explanation or a backstory behind some of the things we do with the sheriff office within 90 minutes to a 2-minute interview. So by doing it with all the media outlets, we give them an opportunity to ask the questions that the fans or the people of this area want to know about, or more explanation that may not be exactly headline newsworthy, and also gives me an opportunity to kind of get the pulse of society and connecting and give people just an unedited version of what we're doing at sheriff office. And that's why we like to do it live. That's why we don't like to have scripted questions, because we want the people to know exactly what we're thinking and why we're doing what we're doing.
So we do have some questions that we had, and as the Facebook Live goes on, readers can submit questions and we'll ask them to Sheriff Roundtree and he can answer them. So one of the first questions is, of course, last week you had a second deputy arrested this year following an alcohol-related incident.
Mm-hmm.
And you do have an alcohol policy that was enacted last month in March. Are you planning to tweak that policy, or do you feel it just needs time to actually start working?
Yeah, we think it just needs time to set in. The arrest last week and the arrest prior to were extremely unfortunate. But again, the nexus, just like a lot of the ones we had last year, which prompted us to go to the alcohol policy, that they were alcohol related. And we all know, for those that alcohol alters your state of mind, whether for the good or the bad or rational or irrational decisions. Some people make decisions that otherwise they wouldn't normally make. And unfortunately, these two incidents, it cost both of these deputies their jobs and possibly their career in law enforcement, which is sad in any event. But again, we have an agency of 755 individuals, and we're hoping that we can learn from every lesson. We hope the alcohol policy lets us know that we're serious, not just about the integrity of the profession or the agency, about the health and the well-being of the deputies. Because not only when you lose your job, your livelihood, that affects your family, your health insurance, your overall emotional factors. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and just not just person immediately say he needs to be fired, he needs to lose their job. A lot goes into that when a person loses their job. So we're trying to save as many as we possibly can, like I say, emotionally, physically, and mentally.
Okay. And I've talked to Chief Deputy Clayton a couple of times about alcohol in law enforcement and stuff like that. But do you think domestic violence is also an issue within law enforcement?
It's an issue here in Richmond County. Again, I can't speak for other agencies, but again, the nexus is to alcohol related. I don't think any of the incidents we have that may involve any kind of physical violence, or physical altercation, or even verbal altercation, domestically wise, that there's going to be some kind of narcotics or alcohol influence within that. Again, we had talked also about before possibly exploring this budget cycle, a psychologist, police psychologist within the agency. That is something we're very strongly advocating for in the next budget cycle. Because again, we have to take care of these deputies, these men and women, even civilians within the agency, emotionally, and not just going out. Because remember, in law enforcement, these individuals see things that the normal person would never see. And that's what sometimes is frustrating, even though we take responsibility for what happened. So these individuals have to take responsibility for what happened to me. As the head of the agency, I have to take responsibility also. But it gets frustrating sometimes when the general public just immediately jumps to judgment about the severity and the punishment that this person should receive, not knowing day in and day out what this person sees and the emotional effect. We in life and death situations, we've seen children in abuse cases, we've seen traffic fatalities, we've been in the middle of domestic investigations where the kids are involved. So it's a lot of traumatic incidents that can happen in a deputy's life that sometimes the general public just does not take into account, and I think that's unfair.
And do you expect to change the hiring process of deputies at all? Maybe look more at background or anything else that might prevent this from happening?
Well, we do a very extensive background hiring process to conclude with an interview with myself and my two chief deputies. So They go through a round of 3 or 4 individual interviews. Take a series of tests, take a psychological test, physical, health screening, and all those, a polygraph examination, and then, like I say, it's concluded with every person since I've taken office. Before they were hired or interviewed by myself and my 2 chief deputies. So even throughout the entire process, we get that one last look and we ask those tough questions because we've seen it. We've seen the effects of, we've had jailers who've had inappropriate contact with inmates that we've had to fire and even prosecute. So we've seen the alcohol-related incidents. We've seen some of the reckless behavior with the driving of the vehicles and whatnot. So we go through all this during the hiring process, and we tell them what we expect and what this job means to us and what we expect out of our individuals. So I think we do a great job of that. But the thing about it is that we have to keep reinforcing that. So with my command staff meeting that we have every 2 weeks, I tell them it's not enough just to say it once. It's not enough just to put the alcohol policy in place. Now we have to do it in in-service. We have to do it at every roll call. We have to keep reinforcing the things that the good behavior, because it's that momentary lapse in judgment, again, can result in someone losing their career.
So we actually did have a reader question submitted before this Facebook Live, and it's from BJ Graham. He lives downtown and is concerned about the unsafe amount of broken beer bottles and loitering near the Circle K gas station on Walton Way. He's also concerned about speeding on James Brown Boulevard between Walton Way and Langley Walker. He has raised issues with 311, so does your office and our officers have to take note of these issues like loitering and stuff like that and report them to, or are they not required to do that?
No, those are, like I say, if it's from a business, then we take the reports from the businesses. Because again, remember, those are private properties. So unless there's a crime in progress or the private property owner calls us, then we usually, that's an incident just like in your home. If you don't want to cut your grass, if you want to have trash in your yard and stuff, that's the way you choose, unless there's a law being broken. So the broken glass and all that stuff doesn't fall under the purview of law enforcement. Now, of course, all the time we're always monitoring speeding, that complaints that we get, but we usually base our traffic enforcement based on where we see a large number of accidents. Because remember how large Richmond County is. We can't be everywhere running radar. That's just not feasible for us. So if you hear that question throughout the county about, say, well, people speeding on my street, people speeding on Peach Orchard Road, people speeding on Bobby Jones. I do not deny that at times. But like I said, we base on our enforcement, especially for the traffic laws, on where we see the traffic accidents, where we see the traffic fatalities. As you know from statistics, we have a large number of pedestrian-related traffic fatalities in Richmond County, and that's just from people just avoiding, just going across the street, thinking that the car is supposed to yield to them. So these are the areas in which we do enforcement, because you can't enforce every inch of the county 24 hours a day. So we base it on the numbers and intelligence-based policing based on where we see a need, and that's where we devote most of our resources.
And again, if you are watching this on Facebook Live, feel free to ask any questions of the sheriff, and we'll try to get them in. So another question we had is, there have been some recent attacks on religious places around the country. Is the sheriff's office thinking of increasing security, or some of the religious places here in Richmond County have reached out to you about increasing security because after these attacks?
Usually, anytime that we have a major event or something of that nature, then we may get a call from the establishment. And what we do is we call a threat assessment. So, we don't have anything as a credible threat. We tell everyone always to be vigilant. You always have to be vigilant. So whether you increase patrol or not patrol, you still have to be vigilant. If someone is planning a horrific attack or something of that nature, they're going to do everything they can to follow through with that attack. So what we do, like I said, we monitor any social posts or media that we feel may be a threat assessment. We talk to some of the religious organizations, have they gotten any negative chatter from their side, and then we base it on that. So right now, anytime we see something national, of course, we look at anything that we're doing, anything we can do doing better. Right now, we don't see any heightened levels of threat process in this area. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. But we always monitor that to see, and then if we do feel that there is a potential active threat, then we'll either add increased security or meet with those individuals and say, hey, this is what we found, you need to be a little more vigilant. So it's like anything else. Those are issues that make the news. but I think being vigilant in all, not just, again, it's just like when you have school-related violence. Then they ask you, are you going to increase more presence in school? And that's not the key. The key, again, is always being prepared and always taking steps to make it as hard as possible for a person to carry out this kind of attack.
And we did get some reader questions. One of the questions is, what do you think about the CAVE task force?
Well, we have individuals on the CAVE task force that look for the vulnerable, and they made quite a number of arrests. Now, to my surprise, I wasn't aware of as many unlicensed care homes that we have in Richmond County and surrounding counties. And it's sad that individuals will take advantage of the vulnerable. Unfortunately, some of these individuals are in conditions that they otherwise wouldn't want to be in. And for someone to take advantage of them, I think that is just a cruel individual. So to have a resource that we can be a part of that target these individuals, not just for the prosecution standpoint, but to let them know that we do care about the vulnerable. We care about people who have been put in this situation. So I think the more attention that's been placed on it, the more arrests that are made, the more attention again is brought to it, then it may stop some of these individuals because they know that we're looking and we're investigating these crimes are taken very seriously in Richmond County.
Another reader question is, what are your plans to involve our youth who may be interested in pursuing a law enforcement career?
Well, we started our Explore program. Now, one of the things that we were able to do is partner that with some of the local organizations, as far as the Board of Education, some of the college campus police agencies and whatnot. So that way, when I Explore program, it can get young individuals interested in the field of law enforcement, kind of get them, on a grassroots area of how to work out. We do our kids cop camp every year for smaller kids, and then we do a youth police academy every summer to get kids for that 1 week exposed to the law enforcement profession. Again, a lot of it we do with schools and school fairs to spread the word. We're always looking for great candidates in the law enforcement field. Another thing is we're taking advantage of our veteran pool that we have, at Fort Gordon. So, we're looking at it from both sides. We have a lot of colleges and universities here. Like I said, again, we're very active in the school system. Where my Champs program, we have 8 or 9 programs going on simultaneously to get them exposed at an early age. But again, once we get the Explorer program up and running to capacity, that's going to be a way to get those who are close enough that they can start thinking about a career in law enforcement. And hopefully, we can get that new generation involved in public service.
So homicides and murders are always concerning to people in the community, and we have talked about those a couple of times. But recently, we have had children that have been killed here in the community. How concerning is this to the sheriff's office, and why are children being affected by these homicides and murders?
Well, I don't think children are being targeted, and that's when you think you have a problem. But any loss of life is tragic, but a loss of a child affects the community, and a lot of people take that to heart because a lot of individuals, unfortunately, and no one, again, whatever their action deserves their life to be taken. But sometimes people put themselves in situations in bad circumstances that increases the likelihood of harm to themselves. But that's a choice that they made, especially with some of the recent deaths we've had of children. Those are not the case when it comes to children. And that's why it hits so home to everyone, because here are children who are being exposed to a situation based on something beyond their control. When I worked homicide for the 10 years, all children of death hit hard every time. There's no small amount if you had one, or if you had a large number, it affects the community the same, because everyone either has children or has taken care of children or has nieces and nephews, been around small children, have seen that look on their face, that look of innocence that unfortunately some, as they get older, they lose that. But to have that look, to have that to experience that, people, when they look at the loss of a child, they look at someone close to them. So they see their own child in it. So that's why it's so tragic. And like I say, I think it's always going to be that way. So, I don't think the number matters to the fact of how it affects the soul. Because when you lose a child, I think you lose an innocent level of society, and it takes a little bit from everybody.
And another thing I know the sheriff's office has done is try to reduce gun violence here.
Always, yes.
And can you talk a little bit about some of the progress you guys have and how progress has been made through those areas?
Yeah, that's consistently our greatest challenge in Richmond County, is the amount of gun violence that we have. And we're trying everything that we possibly can to reduce it. And unfortunately, that's a trend throughout the United States. But again, I'm a sheriff for Richmond County, so I need to be concerned with what's happening in Richmond County. You can't use national statistics to hide behind. But we're constantly, again, from education to enforcement to operations. As you know, we've done a lot of the gang operations, some of the more lengthy ones. We still have some ongoing. Like I said last year when we started targeting some of these violent gangs with the guns. We've had about 3 federal operations, joint operations. Like I said, we have some more that's still ongoing. Now that should be coming out very soon that we can reveal to the individuals. But it's still our major problem. There's no magic solution to it. I wish it was. We look around the country to try to see what other cities are doing, what kind of success they're having. And anything that we see we have success with, we try to continue it. We try to imitate it from other people. We have our giving back program that we're doing now for individuals who are likely to commit for being involved in gun crime. So we're kind of pre-identifying those individuals and making contact and saying, look, based on our statistics, based on this model that we have, within the next 12 to 24 months, you're likely to either be a victim or involved in a gun-related crime. And unfortunately, those statistics are holding true. So that's part of the educational process of it, that we're trying to get out in front of it. Now, ultimately, it's up to that individual if they decide to pick up a gun and decide to do harm with it. I think one of the most dangerous individuals in the world is a convicted felon in possession of a firearm, because their mindset is they've already run afoul of the law. And the law says that whatever their sentence was or whatever, they're out. They've done their time, made a deal, whatever the case may be. But they've been convicted of a felon, and by that felony conviction, the law says you are not to possess a firearm. And when that person knowingly does so, then their mindset is out to do wrong. And that is a dangerous individual. So those are individuals we really want to target, to the fact that you've been given a chance, a second chance, a third chance, or whatever it may be, to make a productive choices in your life, to be a productive member of society, but you choose to carry a firearm. So I think you're forfeiting that right that the system has provided you. So we're always looking for those. We're always going to make those cases. So if you're convicted of felony, you're carrying a gun, rest assured we're always going to pursue those cases. We're going to try to lock those individuals up.
And we did get 2 more reader questions, and feel free to keep submitting your questions as we continue this interview. One of the questions is, what's the plan to retain officers to help with the shortage?
Well, that is a misconception, because there is no shortage. A few years ago, we lost a lot of deputies to other organizations at the time, but we rebuild those now. I would say we had 95% capacity as far as staffing. Now the key is, like I say, training them and retaining them. So I hate people when they get one narrative and they keep it for years. That may have been a narrative at one time, but it's no longer a narrative. Right now we have 2 classes of individuals in the police academy right now. So that's about 18 individuals that'll be coming out in about 4 weeks. We're almost fully staffed in our detention center. We're about 5 vacancies short, which is unheard of. Now that the key part of it is to train them and retain them. We got them, which is great, because we're in a very good position right now. But we need to get those, like I say, those 18, 19 individuals that are going to be graduating in 4 weeks. Then they got another 12 weeks in the FTO program before they can even be out on their own. Right now, like I said, the things that we're doing with the recruitment, some of the things we're doing again with our veteran a program. We have some direct hires from universities and colleges where people come in with a bachelor's degree. We direct hire them straight into the academy. So we have a lot of programs for different individuals. So we have those for the ones who are just starting in law enforcement. We have those who are making it their second career. We have some of those who are retiring from the military, and some of those who are coming out from college. So we have a program for each of those individuals to say, we have a place for you in Richmond County. And then, think about the amount of work you do. Now, hopefully, with the commission, like I said, we were able to make our salaries competitive. Now, we're still not the highest paid in the region, but at least we are competitive now. But then, you look at the amount of work. One of the recruiting tools that we do when I talk to young deputies or young recruits or applicants, I tell them, I said, last year we answered over 423,000 calls for service last year, where our nearest competitor answered about 65,000. So that lets you know that we work here in Richmond County, and we have an opportunity to do great things. We save lives here. We've had deputies save lives, and we acknowledge those. So we're in a great position. I hope we continue to build off what we have. And I think the citizens of Augusta will see and start to see the fruits of those labor once that young force gets trained and hit the street and make their mark. I'm part of that old generation now, which I never thought I would get old when I first started straight out of college. But I'm part of that older generation of law enforcement. So it's a new generation that's coming in, and I'm excited about them making their mark.
So another reader question is, what are you doing to slow the drug trade, especially with opioids?
Well, it's the same thing with everything in law enforcement. Everything is a process. Now again, the opioid epidemic problem has hit highlight because of most of the overdose. Now opioids has always been out there, but just like in cycles of everything else, a lot of drugs go in cycles. At one time, marijuana was a drug of choice, which is making a comeback. But now, as you can see, with legislation, is leaning more toward legalizing now than enforcement. At the time, cocaine was the drug of choice. At one time, back in the 80s, crack cocaine was the epidemic in the country. Now with the opioids, especially now, the accessibility of prescription medications, which leads to this opioid addiction, and then the overdose, are getting the attention now. So we're combating that. That's why we had the need for Narcan to be put in our deputies' cars. So that was an expense that we didn't budget for, but we felt we had to have. Deputies have successfully used Narcan to resuscitate and revive individuals from opioid overdoses. So we're combating that. That is something now is a new normal here that we have to combat. Like I said, when I say I'm part of the older generation of law enforcement, back when I started, we just had to enforce the laws that were on the books and respond to calls that they were given to us. Now, like I said, we're counselors now, we're recruiters, we're mentors. Now we have to provide first aid individually. We do interpretation of disputes. We're asked to do so much now as a law enforcement deputy. So that's just one more of the tools and the tasks that we have been assigned. So right now, like I said, we're doing everything we can to educate. We have opioids task force that my chief deputy is heading up. He meets with other agencies to see what's the latest trend. So we're on top of that. Like I said, we have a lot of community partners that's on the opioid task force, because again, it's not just a law enforcement issue, it's a community problem. So we have to have community resources. So, and a lot of these things, and I thank you for the question, but a lot of these things, that's why when you asked me in the beginning, why do we do these Facebook Lives? Because now I get able to ask the question and show the thing that people won't normally see. Because usually you won't see the news story about the opioid task force that the sheriff office is a part of, or some community departments. Just like our Giving Back program, they're going out today at 2 o'clock to reach about 20 individuals, like I said, who may be affected by gun violence. You won't see that on the news because, one, people are less likely to accept the help with the news media there. But again, we're not doing it for the publicity. We're doing it to make a difference. So like I said, answers two of your questions. One, why we do this? We do this because we think it's important for the people to know that we're just not out there locking people up and writing tickets.
And another thing that's being in people's mind here in Richmond County is the gang problem here. How big is the gang activity here in Richmond County, and how do you hope to address it, to continue to address it?
Yeah, we, that's why we started our gang task force, because we saw that there was an active gang problem in Richmond County. So our gang task force, along with our intel unit, are actively tracking, anywhere between 60 to 70 gangs that are actively participating in Richmond County. Like I said, we've done the federal partnerships to crack down on gang activity. So the biggest thing is the fact that we have officers dedicated to that. Now with the new administration in the governor's office, who are creating a prosecutorial task force for gang-related activities, we definitely want to be a part of that, and hopefully to get out in the state. So we are aggressively targeting gangs in Richmond County. We made that quite clear that if we see gang activity, we're trying to prosecute them not just from an individual standpoint, but we're doing the RICO statutes, the racketeering, we're trying to do the operations, we're trying to dismantle core groups. We've had some success. We've been doing it a couple of years now, taking that approach. And most of the time when we do make those arrests, we do anything from 8 to 10 to 15 individuals at a time. We're going to continue to do that. Like I said, we have some other stuff that's in the works that you'll be seeing within the next 30 to 45 days. But we want the citizens of Richmond County, not just the citizens of Richmond County to know, but those criminal actors who are engaging in the activity that we're actively tracking, and we're trying to make cases against you.
So, and what are some of the areas where you're seeing this gang activity throughout the county, and what are some of the crimes that these people are committing?
Throughout the county. When people ask where is there gang activity, throughout Richmond County. There's no set area of gang territory in Richmond County, because a lot of the gangs are mostly originated through neighborhood affiliations. So they're familiar with one either from school that they attend within the general location, or within the neighborhood in which they're brought up and growing. So that's where they originate from. So every section of Richmond County has neighborhoods. So we have gang activity in all of Richmond County. What was the second part of your question?
And what are some of the crimes these people?
Well, that's the thing about it. Now, gangs are to finance themselves, go anything from the property crimes all the way up to homicide. One of the last homicides we had, we feel that there's a gang nexus into it, which was an execution style homicide. So drugs, property crimes, burglaries, and again, the gun violence. So when people ask what gangs are you really targeting, it's easy to say all of them, but we're really targeting the ones we feel are most violent or most prone to violence, or when we know to be engaging in violent activities. So those are the ones we put our focus on, because we feel that they're extremely dangerous. So when I had this conversation with a person just a couple of days ago, the misconception is people think if a gang doesn't have a national name like the Latin Kings, the Gangs of Disciples, Crips of Blood, then they're not a real gang. And that's a misconception, because an individual, two individuals that's toting AR-15, AK-47, they're shooting up houses, they're shooting up cars, they're shooting up individuals, that's a gang in every sense, and that's a dangerous gang. And we need the people to know in Richmond County that don't get caught up in the name, get caught up in the activity in which they're doing it. That's what we're targeting.
So we only have 2 minutes left, so one last question. The city and the commission is talking about building a new juvenile justice center right in front of your office at 401 Walton Way. What would the sheriff's role be on that? Or you guys don't know yet?
No, it's just like we work within the courts of juvenile court system, so we have officers assigned to the juvenile court system. Anything that's involving youth offenders, that's why we think it's a great fit, a great match for us, because if it is across the street from us, we have immediate access. Now again, just our traditional roles in law enforcement as the sheriff, we have to provide some courtroom security, we have to provide some transport of that nature. So our traditional role stays the same. But if they're doing a true educational juvenile justice center, then we definitely expect to take an active role in the prevention, to provide resources that the courts may need to intervene in the crimes, because at that level what they're trying to do is not for punishment, it's for rehabilitation and try to keep them from entering the adult justice system from the juvenile justice system. So it's more of a preventive nature. So anything that system can do and we can be a part of that stops that person from coming over from 401 to Fantasy Road, we're definitely going to be a part of that.
All right, I think that's the time. Thank you again, Sheriff Roundtree, for it.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we got a lot of questions in.
Yeah.